So I've started the video. All right, so welcome to day 2, week 1. I want to just start with my little, what is that? I do my recap, and this is still, you still have 6 minutes if you've yet to post your opening comment. So get that done. So far still on schedule here. Let me see what I post for announcements. I did post a recap and you got that. So I'll just go straight to, we're still in week 1. I sent everyone the syllabus, so as an email attachment, and it also provided the first chapter from Sellers, just to make sure everyone had it. I'm not sure if everyone has their physical copy of their book. I need to get mine. So your physical copy of your book.
Mine is in the mail.
All right, so that's why I provided the first chapter, and hopefully you can also see the second chapter, and that should give people this week and next week to secure. I can't post more than what I've already posted because then I'm breaking some sort of, like, you know, I need to honor the work of the author and not print her whole book for free. So make access to it for free. All right, so the other thing I want to show you is when you go to the course documents, I'm showing you this for a reason. If you ever see this little red thing, that just means I posted a file and something happened to it and now it's corrupt, you can't get to it. And this is the updated syllabus, and I just didn't post a new one because I wanted you to see this warning, and don't ignore it, because if you see it, that means I haven't seen it yet. So please let me know that you see this red thing that says there's an invalid file. Additionally, if you come across a link that I have, like, it's supposed to take you to a website or something, that link can be broken. This stuff just happens however the internet, the technology wants it to happen. And usually you'll see it before I do. So I would appreciate you letting me know. And I haven't quite made the link available for you to let me know that. I'll show you that link at the end. I don't want to send a bunch of emails. So you'll let me know in the discussion board area, and that way everyone would know the link doesn't work and not just me. And then we can not tell me 23 times. We can just tell me one time. So the other thing I did is I posted the PDFs for chapter 1 and chapter 2. So those are the items, and I will update the syllabus here. In the right area. Student view. I want to enter student view. So you have those 2 chapters to get started. And I'm asking you to actually get started on the practices for chapters 1 and chapters 2. I went through and recounted the number of practices in those chapters. That was not fun because I counted them once and twice and 3 times earlier this summer, and I'm like, I'm never confident in my counting ability, being an awesome dyslexic learner. So I counted them again, and I saw that, well, chapter 1 didn't have a lot. It had 5. I shouldn't say didn't have a lot. It had 5 practices, but some of these practices are quick and easy, and some of them are long and drawn out. So it has 5, but 5 is relative. And so I'm asking you to get started on chapter 1 and chapter 5. So I'm going to open the syllabus that I sent you. I'm going to bring that up on the screen here, hopefully. While there is still at least one thing I forgot to change, it's not significant, it's just a typo, but I don't think it impairs your ability to know what you're doing. So I'm not going to redo this whole thing. But this syllabus does have the course schedule, and it has my office hours, which was missing on the last one. And, oh, and it has the updated version of the assignments. So here in Word, if you open your document in Word, these links here, this is like a fast way to get through the syllabus. So depending on what you're on, I'm on a PC. If I hold down my control button and I click on one of these titles, it will take me to that point in the syllabus. So that's what I want to do. So I'm going to go to point values. I want to show you another trick. Just some of you may know this stuff, but if you're using a document and it has what's called headers in it, mine does have headers in it. Let's see if I can view these. So I'm switching to my view screen and I'm going to tell Word to turn on my navigation pane. So all these headers right here, this is another way to quickly navigate. It's like the same as the table of contents. I can quickly navigate through the document. And that's just a quick way so you don't like have to scroll and waste your life scrolling through at least this document. So I want to just talk a little bit about the assignments and then open it up for any kind of questions that you may have about the syllabus. And actually, this is a point, if you have a specific question, you can always type a question into the chat area. And then I can take a moment and preview those and come back and ask and answer them by the end of class or during class. All right, so we have the creative writing log. I changed the name, but you are responsible for doing all of the practice activities in chapters 1 through 8. And also for each of those chapters, you have to do one of the writing projects, and there's always a choice at the end of the chapter. So that comprises the reading writing log, and I evaluate those equally. So if yes, one chapter has 5 practices, another chapter has 15, chapter 1 and chapter 2, they're all worth equal value. I dislike math, so I'm not trying to make this overly complicated. And the practices, what I gathered from the course I taught earlier this summer with this text, so this is my second time in like 14 weeks playing around with this, with the Sellers text, is that the more practices you do, or you attempt, you get through, you complete, even though it may ache your brain or your belly, actually has this cumulative effect where it ends up being very helpful. So just remember that as you're trudging through them. And then the other major parts is we have 2 writing workshops. These are like peer-reviewed workshops. So you have to submit a portfolio at the end of the semester. That portfolio has to include 1 poem and 1 fiction piece. I hope if I didn't put the details in here, that you'll get the details later. But from memory, the fictional piece cannot be more than 6 double-spaced pages. And that is because I don't really have time to read everybody's novel. So you are forced in some constraints. Katie, you have a question?
Yeah, I went through chapter 1 looking at the practices, looking like 4 practices, and I counted 9.
And which one?
Chapter 1.
Oh, so aren't I'm being true that like my dyslexic ability to accurately count holds true. So I'm probably wrong. So
it says practice.
If there are 9.
Yeah, there's 9.
If there are 9, you should do all 9 of them, even though I said there are 5. But since I wrote 5 and the syllabus is sort of a contract, if you only complete 5, I won't deduct. But as the true writers that you are, you should complete all of them. I am very unhappy that these practices are not numbered. So that's how we'll do that. There sure are. I'm like looking at it and I literally counted 9 and I wrote 5. So no. Oh, that's chapter 2. Never mind. Is that clear enough for you all? I put 5. If you have 5, you're done. But to get the most, you should do all the practices in the chapter. If you're good with that, we're good to go. So if that's okay with everyone, if you don't like that decision, can you select the no button and then I could just talk to you later. You go to the participants, and if you don't like what I just said, no, I don't like what
I had another thing. The 9 practices. How do you want us to, do you want us to submit those on Blackboard or what?
Yeah, on in the last class, I went through and I talked about the different ways you can submit them because someone asked that they have to type them all. And I was like, no, you just have to somehow submit proof that you completed them. And if you check out the video from that class, I show you like my example. Like I hand wrote some of mine and I also typed them. So when I hand wrote them, what I did was I took photos of like my handwritten ones. I took photos, I emailed them to myself, and I imported them into a Word doc and saved it and submitted it. So there will be a link on Blackboard for you to submit your work.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for
It's not there yet because it's not due until next week.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yes. So the only thing I need to be able to discern is the number next to the practices somehow. So please number them.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that's on Blackboard that is due is the pre-survey, right?
Yep. And when you look at the schedule, it shows you like when things are due. You
Okay.
never, I mean, that would be horrible if I was like, hey, I don't know if you have the book, submit these all by Thursday today. So, but you get a little time. But that does take me to the question about the submitting things. So I'm gonna go to the schedule here a sec. Go up here. And I want to explain to you why you have 3 different submission dates. So Tuesday and Thursday class time. If we're doing work in class, those are usually the days when you have things are due, that the things are due. Like today, I hope that we will get time to go over one of the practices. So in chapter 1, and so by the time we meet next week on Tuesday, you should have completed chapter 1 and I would say at least the first part of chapter 2, because we're going to start talking about them during class time. So you have, that's the sort of idea around Tuesday and Thursday. But this Sunday due date, think about that as an extension of the current week. So instead of next week saying, you need to submit your writing log practices with the writing projects, instead of saying you need to submit those next week Thursday, because that's when our, that class meets, the last day of the class, I am allowing you to submit it by Sunday. So it's still in the same week, so I'm just giving you that little more flexibility. You can submit it early. You can submit it as long as the link is there. Does that make sense? And if not, can you raise your hand if you have a question? Or if it does make sense, can someone repeat like what they heard? Can I get a volunteer to say, this is what I understand about why we have Sunday? So just like today, instead of saying, oh, you should have the pre-survey done today, I just put it like, you got till Sunday to get it done.
Okie dokie, more time then. Yay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm extending the time a bit. And so when you, oh, what happened?
I don't know.
Everything here on my screen just went off. Okay, I do not know. It came back on. At least you're still there. The screen just went away. Okay,
Indeed.
sharing is stopped. Because
You'll never be rid of me. Ha ha ha.
all right, I don't know. This is something about some external cable, something happened, but you're there, which, what the heck is going on? All right, so bear with me because I'm having technical difficulties. So, but that's my explanation for, are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, okay. Because I can't see.
Sounded
Okay.
the technical thing. It sounded like a USB unplugged. That's the noise that it made.
Yeah. That, like I said, I'm at work, and so I got more cables than I normally would have at home, and something just went away, and then it came back. All right.
5.
That was fun. Let's see. I don't think anybody got kicked out. You can't see my screen though. think I got it.
Trust me, you'd know if I did. It'd be really quiet.
All right, I'm just trying. Oh, goodness. Share screen. All right, I'm gonna just get some of this back. All right, so hopefully you can see the.
Oh, we can. Well, I can.
All right.
I can see it too. I can see the screen.
Okay, I got that back, and
Ah,
all of that fun stuff got recorded. So, so that's the idea here. And as you see, I did my best to count this stuff here. And again, if my numbers are off, I'll be looking for this number that I put here. No penalties. I'm not really trying to penalize people anyway, because some of these practices, I am trying to do them as you go through. And I can tell you the first time I taught this class in the summer session, which was 7 weeks, I only got through the first 1.5 chapters. So trying to do them. And some of them I just personally disliked. I'm like, this sucks. I don't want to make this list. So, but I did put some effort into it. And then I also came back later. I'm like, okay, I have that. But some of them, the reason we're doing them all is because I don't know what works best for everyone in class. And so that's the idea. But you have the schedule here. The schedule is subject to change. If I have to change something, I will usually let you know in class and then also post it in my recap. Yeah, I guess that's it that I want to say about the syllabus. When we start class, those first 10 minutes of class is another time you can ask questions about the syllabus. Is always in forever. You can ask questions. I just quickly say late work, don't turn any in, and then because it's not accepted. However, life happens, so you have this thing called an extension voucher. And you can use that whenever you need to, but I do need to let you know that the extension voucher counts for you, but it also counts for me because I'm a human being too, and stuff happens. And sometimes stuff happens to me and I may have to use the extension voucher. And if I do, I'll say, hey, I'm using the extension voucher. I won't have this thing graded yet because life happened to me. And what's great about the extension voucher is no one has to tell anyone why. So that's that thing. And I think that's all I had for the syllabus. So if you have any questions throughout the course of the class, you can go ahead and post them. And maybe we can get back to them at the end of class. At this point, I'm going to try to get back. I'm going to try to log back onto Blackboard here and see what happens. So we can get back to, really? I did not. Fine, I don't believe you. So, oh, it's already, whoa, okay. All right, so with that, how far off schedule am I? I'm like way into my mini lesson. All right, so one of the things I did ask you all to do was to check out this mini lesson by Zinsser, sorry, Mr. Zinsser. And so I'm going to talk about it as if you did. So, which means kind of quickly. The mini lessons, they're always here. You can go back to them. You can ask questions about them. And my phone is doing this thing again. So I'm not good at remembering to turn it off. Okay, so one of the things that, so in this text on writing well is actually a text for, I think it mainly is a series of talks that this guy made 100 billion years ago. And it's focused on nonfiction. And so when I taught this class earlier in the year, I came across them like, I really want to use this. Everything he's saying is applicable to creative writing. But the whole title it has something in there like writing for nonfiction. But since we also have what's called like creative nonfiction, and that term bugs me a lot. It's like, what is creative nonfiction? Are you just making up stuff? If you're making up stuff, is it nonfiction? But this is the area for which we put things like memoirs, right? And stories that are based on people's lives, dramatizations and things like that. So it is A memoir is nonfiction, but by nature, it is also creative, right? Because I say right like you agree with me. You may not. But it's also creative if you think about it this way. So if I'm gonna write about, you know, how I dealt with the loss of my goldfish, and I have to talk about, I want to put in there how I saved up money and worked with my parents and all this stuff. And in that, I'm recreating scenes, I'm recreating places, I'm recreating conversations. I don't remember the exact conversation I had with my mom and dad about whatever I need to do. So in that sense, it's still true, it's still nonfiction, but we have to by nature be creative with it. So if you look this up, you're like, why is Professor Muhammad using a nonfiction text in here? Because I believe some of the things, many of his approaches are applicable to what you're learning. And so I'm proposing that we use this Zinsser text as like a foundation that we build from throughout the semester. So hopefully, yeah, you can let me know later if that was just a horrible idea. But it worked the first time around, so let's see if it works in this class. So if you looked at the text, it asks you some things, and I want to know, like, what are your concerns about writing? What keeps you from improving in writing well? And also, you know, do you personally consider writing as an art or a craft? And then I asked you that before moving to the next slide, could you like answer those questions? And then of course you saw the whole thing, but what I like for you to do is to take your initial responses and share them with each other. So I'm gonna put you all into a small group. I'm gonna see if I can get people in groups of 3 or 4 at the max. And then you can have this conversation. What I ask you to do when I put you into small group discussions, I ask you, no, you may be in groups of 4 and 5. What I ask you to do is do like a round robin, have a conversation, and then decide who will be like your report out, who will sort of tell the rest of us when we come back together as a larger group, who's gonna let us know like, okay, these are some of the things we talked about. And once that person gives us like a summary or a short like their takeaway, I ask the other people in the group to either add or compliment. And that way everyone gets to say something and we can kind of like mitigate like all these pauses and waiting for folk. So I'm gonna put you in a group and I'm gonna ask you to share this information, and then we're gonna go through, because when I put you into the group, you will not, we learned this other day, be able to see my screen. So hopefully you have your notes in front of you. And the beauty of this, even if you didn't do this since we met on Tuesday, they're here, they're simple. You can literally have this conversation now, and then we'll come back and talk about the Zinsser piece, because he actually does say, yes, you know, he says that writing is a craft and not this art, and then we'll talk about it more. So that's what I'm going to do. So we likely won't do writing time today. We're going to still do more discussion time. And I usually will always put you in random groups until we get until I figure out how to make Zoom permanent groups, but that doesn't usually work because sometimes people don't show up. So the random is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video. So when we come back together this way, I just ask everyone to raise their hand because I can get a visual and see how many people have spoken already. So that is the reason why I asked you to raise your hand. So I'm gonna keep share on. And it looks like I missed, okay, 18 people have raised their hand. If you haven't raised your hand, I'm assuming you can't find it on the device you're using. So again, this week is all logistics, and let's walk through this. Believe me.
Wait, can't find what, sorry.
Oh, it gets smoother. So as we go, because you'll know like, oh, we're talking, let me raise my hand and do that kind of jazz. So I asked you to discuss, you know, these first questions from the presentation about writing. So this is where we just do our debrief and takeaway. asked you to pick someone who will start the conversation. And just to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to say something, when that person reports out, that means that group is on. And then when that person is done, the group members, I really encourage you just to add something. If you want to fill in the gaps, if you want to elaborate, that's beautiful. And once you're done, you put your hand down, and then we'll go on to the next group. And if it's too quiet, I'll just call a name and hopefully I will not mispronounce it. So with that, who would like to start?
I can do it. So my name's Adam. I was in a group with Evan, Bailey, and Macy. So for our first question, which was, let me pull it up. What are your concerns about writing? We all had very different concerns personally. One of us, Evan, was afraid of writer's block and how he could creatively write in general. Bailey doesn't think she has enough time. All her ideas she has, but she just doesn't have the time to write them down. So she makes notes about everything. Macy is afraid that what she writes will have no interest to others. On the second tab, what keeps you from improving and writing well? It was two big answers: was a lack of motivation in considering ourselves to be good writers, or feedback. And specifically it was the fear of no feedback, or the fear of sharing and getting that feedback. For the third question, is writing an art or a craft? We all said both, or it depends specifically. And I don't mean to speak for all of us entirely, but we came up with the subjective versus objective looking. You can have the subjective opinion of, yes, this is art, and subjectively, this is bad art, or objectively, this is a great sentence, but subjectively, I think this is garbage. And Evan brought up the point, like modern art, you can have a pile of rubbish and you can consider that art, but to others, that's just a pile of rubbish.
Because I've seen many pieces of artwork that I swear my second grader created. I'm like, what the heck did I just pay money for? But no, thank you for doing that. And as we go through, like everyone that was in Adam's group, if you want to add something, but if you're good, you can literally just lower your hands. Or you can add. And so as we go through this, you can touch on every question. You could consolidate. We're just working our best to try to create some sort of conversation to report out and move through. And hopefully we'll get smoother as we go. So anybody else from that group? If not, you should lower your hands. That's how I know we're getting through this. All right. Someone else wants to start, or do I need to attempt to say a name?
I can go for my group.
Okay.
So I don't remember the names of the people in my group.
That's fine. You don't have to. They know who they are.
Cool. So for the number one, concerns about writing, it seemed like generally my group's concerns were that people like wouldn't be interested in their writing, or it would just like, you know, like concerned that we're not good writers and that like no one would want to read it, which sort of played into the second one, which was what keeps you from improving. A big one was procrastination for our group, that specifically me. And that people might not want to read it. And his writing.
And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna interrupt, and this is just the first time, so please let's not take any of this personally. So people, you know, you're in the group, and if you see your person in the group, like, oh yeah, it's okay for group members to interrupt each other and say, oh, I think, and chime in. So that's all I wanted to add.
Absolutely, please interrupt me. And is writing an art or a craft? We said generally it was sort of both. More specifically, like the sort of practice of writing and like trying to get better is the craft portion of it, and then the actual like final product and what you like, you know, once you've like completed a writing, that can be sort of the art portion, like the part that gets like seen and experienced by others, is the art.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
So same thing, if you're in that group, you can chime in, you can talk over each other in a nice way. And if Dane did you justice, put your hands down. I am looking in the chat. This is the area, and the chat is another area that you can still post as we're doing this breakout. All right, so how about Lydia's group?
Hello, I can go. So for our concerns about writing, we all kind of like had this shared nervousness about other people seeing our work, whether that be in terms of like editing or just like reading it and enjoying it as a whole. And then what keeps us from improving, we all talked about how we were busy and we all had a lot of things going on, so it's kind of hard to put time and love into that. And then in terms of writing being an art or a craft, we said it could really go either way and it's kind of a fluid thing. It's just kind of how you see it as an individual. So yeah.
All right. So Lydia did you justice, hands down. And let's see, who am I looking at? Jamie. Oh, Jamie M. I know there are two Jamies. Jamie.
I think Jamie K is speaking for us.
All
or
right,
Jamie
cool.
Q.
I'm just calling the name, whoever is your group. Go ahead, Jamie K. Both the Jamies were together.
All right. So the first and second question kind of went together for us. We were kind of like scared about how we might not be like adequate and no one will understand our writing, and how we were kind of worried that like there's like the whole stigma how like being an artist in general, like you can't make a living off it, and that was one of our main concerns. And we were divided on the art and craft. We all genuinely thought it was art, but some of us just didn't know the difference. So yeah.
Thank you. All right. If you did it justice, hands down, and who do we have left?
Bye-bye.
Looks like we have one group left. Hello? Needy, Cole, Elise. Is it Alicia or Alicia?
Alicia.
Okay.
Okay, we didn't pick someone for our group, but I'll talk. The first question, Cole specifically, he was worried about how to make the audience feel our writing, like about having that emotional connect with them, basically. And also, me personally, I worry about running out of things to say. I don't find myself very creative, so. And worrying about transitioning from one topic to another and filling that gap. The next question, what keeps you from improving and writing well? Time and procrastination was a big one for our group. Also, me and a couple others agreed that about too much structure. Like, I don't specifically like when there's a certain topic I have to talk about or like a lot of stipulations to it. And for the last question, most of my group said a craft, but I think it can be an art as well.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I think that's everyone. I don't see any more hands, but I could be wrong. All right, so I just jotted down a few notes. And some things that come to mind. I think in some of the things I heard for the first two questions kind of support the idea that writing is a craft. And then in some of the responses I heard for, is it an art or a craft? It's both. And so I think all of that is correct. So for example, like figuring out like that, the idea about sharing and putting yourself out there, getting feedback. And then I heard like time management and procrastinating is one of the things that I heard about some of the things that keeps people from improving and just having time to work on it. So that's true. I mean, and I think I said this in another previous video, like I I used to, I don't do this so much anymore, but I used to really pride myself up until like last year actually on being a really good procrastinator. Like I am awesome. So my goal in life was like, I want to like get paid for procrastinating. Like, is there any way I can get money by not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And I found a way to do that. It wasn't pretty because I literally shouldn't be doing work over here. I just did some other work. Like 1 year I worked at Tivana, which is a tea store. So like, well, I got to go work at Tivana for part-time during the holiday season, which is not my real job. And hence I got paid to procrastinate. That's not good. So one of the ways I think that I want to try to help is beginning apparently now on Tuesday, that when we come to class, you will have some structured time, 25 to 30 minutes of writing during class time. The only way to face the monster of procrastination is to become friends. Like, yo, be cool. So if you schedule yourself time, and again, like I have a lot of thoughts in my head because I'm also attention deficit disorder thinking. I don't like disorder. Like, I don't like that part, but and so what I find is giving myself a lot of structure helps me be accountable. And part of my issue with procrastination is it's easy not to be accountable. So it's easy to keep procrastinating. But when I have a calendar or something that says you're supposed to do A, and then it's written down, it's there. I mean, all my electronic devices beep at me like, I'm like, yeah. So either I can face it or I don't. And it actually has helped me become more accountable. And the more accountable I am, the better I get at not being a procrastinator. So that was my long drawn out issue about procrastination. So back to this whole thought about art versus craft. Yes, it is both. Yes, it is fluid. Yes, it depends. I think it depends on when you start to look at yourself as a writer seriously or with any kind of serious intent, like taking this class. So this class is designed around, I'm inviting and you're coming into this learning an art. No one's coming in this class to be, you're coming in this class learning a craft. I don't expect everybody to be literary artists at this point. So by making it a craft, so writing as a craft and not an art, that means that instead of running away from what we should be doing, this ominous, you should be creating something great, we don't run away from it anymore because we now can look at it by pieces and tools and start to build what like a tool chest of things. And so that's why I want you to think about the practice of creative writing. And I love the title of our book because it's about practice, doing something, and practice hopefully will get you thinking differently and taking some of the techniques and tools that you find in the text and incorporating them into your way of writing. So at the end of the semester, I hope you all have more tools than you have now to continue developing yourselves as writers in whatever kind of writing you're going to do. And I know someone in class is in a culinary arts, and I just think of culinary arts often because like, hey, you, depending on where you are in that field, you have to do a lot of like talking about food. So, and I can say that the descriptive words for like taste and smell are limited in the English language, at least. So you have to really push yourself when you are trying to be creative in any kind of description that's going to involve like taste and smell for you. Okay, so Zinser also tells us that this is a craft and that writing is personal. So this, I think, gets to the point of like, I don't want to share. Will people understand? Because it is a personal task. If it's creative writing or if it's nonfiction writing, it's you putting who you are in that moment, in that time, in a public space. That is awesomely fear-inspiring, I think. But since it is personal, he says that this sometimes leaves us as writers like confused and bewildered because we often get information about how to write in the way we are instructed to write. I think someone mentioned like, you know, being overly structured, feeling like we have to do something the exact right way. Like there is a right way to do this. So in our writing lives, maybe this is true for some of you, like this is how you are supposed to construct this document and there is a right way. I think that's horrible that we are taught writing that way, because there's so many different roads to get to the message that you want to convey to an audience. And so when we learn this way, we find ourselves feeling vulnerable, we're tense, and we're overwhelmed by the task. Katie, you have a question? Your hand's up.
Oh, me? I must have pressed that by accident.
Oh, okay. So, by using the show of hands button, can you just say yes if you have ever felt overwhelmed by the task of writing? You can see me, so I'm just gonna. I put both.
Every time English class, yes.
And it's relative. So yeah, it depends. Like if I'm writing creatively without any deadline, awesome, wonderful time. If it's an academic assignment, if I have to, even if like I have entered contests before, horrible time trying to, if I don't already have a piece ready, if I'm like, I'm gonna enter this thing and I have to create something, yes, I feel very much overwhelmed. But then I have some tools that, what I hope is that you have some tools that you can walk yourself back from that feeling of being overwhelmed. And it's relative, it depends. Like if I'm writing about something that I thought was particularly easy, but in the process of creating it, I find it's very personal and it takes me someplace I don't want to go, then I'm just, yeah, I become overwhelmed. I have to figure out why. And it's okay to abandon an idea for a while. Don't let yourself be there and be stuck. Just say, oh, I'm just gonna come back to this. I'll do something else. All right, so thank you for that. So my question is for those of us who I give you some of the things that I do, like I'll abandon if I feel overwhelmed, because it's usually because there's some sort of emotional content that I hadn't expected. And so I'll just leave it. And that's mine. For those of you who do not raise your hand, you awesome people who never feel overwhelmed no matter what, you freaks of nature people. The question here is, then can you tell us why? What do you do as a writer that you never feel overwhelmed by a task? I'm just looking for one or two. Can someone share? And if you're too shy to unmute, you can type it, but I would love to hear.
Of when we have trouble like writing?
No, yeah, I asked that. Raise your hand if you did, and if no, why not? So for the people who didn't raise their hand, like you don't ever feel overwhelmed. I want to know your secrets. What do you do?
I mean, the times I don't, I just write. You know, as I've said, I write comic books, and I usually base it on how do I explain this? Stuff I've been watching. Like example, when I've watched I don't know, John Wick movies, I start working on my characters who are assassins.
So in those cases, you do not feel overwhelmed.
No, because when I go on what I call a writing spree, if that makes any sense.
Okay, well then that's something, because the question here is for those of us who do feel overwhelmed, do you ever give yourself, or I mean that is a possible way to attack something and disarm it, by giving yourself the freedom to do something like a writing spree.
Yeah, like if I can't think of one character to write, I just go to another one. You know, I go back and forth.
So for those of us with our hands up, I think that's, for me, that's similar to me. Like I will abandon something. Like I'm not just going to sit there and keep staring at something that's not working. I used to, but I don't do that anymore. So that is actually a tool and a technique. So thank you for sharing that. And it's normal. Nothing is odd about this. So the other thing that he tells us is that we're also taught that we have to create literature. So committing acts of literature versus writing. So for those of us who feel overwhelmed by the task and we're trying to understand this as a personal endeavor. And we aren't necessarily kind to ourselves in that respect. So he explains that we are all vulnerable, we're all tense, we're all driven by some sort of compulsion. If you say you are going to write something, share with people, you're driven by this thing to share some part of yourself in this media. You've done that. I think so. You've already done like the riskiest part by saying you're going to write something. However, we let what we have already learned in the past about writing get so big that we don't give ourselves the freedom. And so when you're doing the practices, as they start to build on you, they're there to help you just generate, especially in chapter 1. So chapter 1 is all about generating ideas, and chapter 2 is about like reading other things creatively. Those are the two things. We need to be able to generate ideas, and we need to read critically creative writing. We need to read other writing. So because of what we learned in the past, instead of sitting down to write, we sit down to create art or literature. And the person who emerges through that process of creating literature may not necessarily be the writer, the person we started out to be. So we start to write for other people. This is what I think the audience wants to see or hear or feel. So the problem is to find the real person behind the tension, behind the barriers. That's what we're attempting to do. So these are some of Zinsser's ideas. And this is why the act of literature versus the act of writing, he calls this is a craft. So he reminds us that there is not a right way to do personal work. It's personal work. You got to figure out your own road. And that's why I asked you to do 1,000 practices, because out of 1,000, you'll pick the 3 that work well for you. And then he also says that there are all kinds of writers and all kinds of methods. The best method for you is the one that works. The one that doesn't work, not good for you. Just put number 6 next to it and move on. And then, so writing requires us to focus on our writing before thinking about it as a product of what we write, whether or not it's going to be loved by other people. So a status of our writing really needs to achieve this literary component. So what do you think about Zinsser's idea of literature versus writing? When I do this in class, I will be happy if I just get 2 people to respond.
I guess I might go. Well, I think the way I understood it is that acts of literature seems like it's more like forced writing, and like writing is more like writing that comes out naturally, like you're just on a roll. So every time I read an essay for English class, like a normal English class, I feel like I'm writing acts of literature rather than just writing, because I have parameters set around those things for the essay, like, oh, I need to have this many sources, and I have a deadline. I feel like those really limit my writing, but when I write naturally, I like just write on my own time and like not having to worry about a deadline or incorporating sources. I feel like I could write more naturally and that my writing is better by a long shot. So that's how I see it.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? One person. I am literally begging.
Hey, I'll go.
Okay.
So my thought process is like an act of literature versus writing is like the thought versus the form. So like the form of writing can be whatever you want, but if it's not formatted in a certain way, it's not considered literature. And so like I agree with what Katie said about how if you feel like you're forced to write in a certain structure, then it doesn't come off as natural, and it doesn't come off as an act of like writing. It comes off as an act of literature. And that, I mean, that's my 2 cents. And
Oh, I'll take that 2 cents.
Yeah.
We're not in a mode of like this is the right answer. So we are going to finish. We're going to come back to this presentation on Tuesday. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, we're going to pick it up at this ultimately, and we'll hopefully get through the rest of it. But what I want to do now is I'm going to send you back to your group, and hopefully people completed at least some of the earlier parts of chapter 1. So I'm just going to ask you to look at the first one. I'm going to bring it on the screen here. Just if you don't have your book, if I can figure out how to move stuff. Stop. Okay. Yes. So the practice, the very first practice, see it in one, asks you to think of an idea for writing, and then asks you to do this fast write, this ramble write. Is it? It's yeah, write what you see. And I want you to know is if you get the online book, the pages are completely different from the print. So in this session, I asked you, the very first one was think of an idea for writing. The bigger, the broader, less, and then ask you to write fast and ramble and give yourself this freedom. And if you did that, I'm gonna ask you to share. I'm gonna put you in a group and ask you to report out what that was like, and just in answering this question here about when you read over it or when you share it in this small group, do you think your readers will have a visual experience? How does any of this fit in with what we've talked about so far in on writing well? If you did that already, so I'm gonna ask you to complete this activity if you didn't. So I'm gonna ask you to write for
And that's not working.
minutes. If you've already done it, I'm gonna ask you to wait 5 minutes and maybe look at something else in the text for 5 minutes, go back to work on something else, and then ask you to come back in your group.
Yeah.
Just talk about this practice.
Mrs. Muhammad.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm not muted. You shared this part on the Blackboard thing, right?
Yes, and I sent it to you in an email.
Okay, I'll have to do the email then, because on Blackboard, when I try and click the first part of chapter 1, it shows the cover, but as I scroll down, it just does gray.
That's fine. That's why I sent it to you as a PDF. But what we can do right here is I want you to do this right now in class. So some people may have already completed it. And when we do go over practices in class, I will often say, hey, I want you to do this. If you've already done it, use that time to review something else. So you're going to be in groups for only about 10 minutes. And I just want you to talk about this. So if everyone in your group has done it, I want you to take those first 4 minutes to talk about it, or I'm sorry, those first 4 minutes to complete it, because this ramble is just about a fast write, and then share what that experience was like. And you can just stay in those groups. You can watch the time. You don't have to come out. It'll kick you out. I don't have 31 people.
Okay.
All right, so please watch your screens. You're only gonna, now as I'm talking about, yeah, so your party is gonna be in groups for like 8 minutes, 4 minutes write, 4 minutes just to report out. And then we will finish up class. Watch for your invite. It's gonna pop somewhere up on your screen. Why do I have I'm sorry, I just want you to know I am recording this part. So I just want to repeat that for the record is that, yeah, it may have been bumpy, but I just wanted you to get a sense for, I will be popping you in and out to discuss different things. And then I interrupted someone. You were saying that it was okay?
Oh, it was rather fun. I basically just use it as an excuse to rant and rave about the modern day music and pop culture.
Well, yeah, and so I mean, there you have the first practice completed. In our last 7 minutes, I did get a chance to just quickly look at some of the items that you posted before we went on that breakout room time. So what I want you to know is I save the chats, I go through, and then I will post like chat highlights. So I copy and paste them, and I'll post the chat highlights, and I'll show you where they will be, because people often post useful content. So normally you'd come back from a practice and we do that same thing, like, okay, let's report out at least like one takeaway, and we'll do that same thing. Someone will go, and if you want to elaborate, and that's sort of how our time is spent, going in and out and doing some writing during class time and all that jazz. So in our last 6 minutes of class, don't forget before you log off, because this is our exit comment part, type your last name and any kind of takeaway from class. So we bridge with hopefully a thought, and we open with a thought, we close with some sort of thought. What I did is I moved the this task of exploring back matter. I don't know if you've done it or not. I just want you to look at some of this content in black matter, and then in back matter, and also complete the survey. So you've already gotten started on the major assignment, which is to start the practice logs. But the back matter over here, what you have, these are just publications that publish current fiction and poetry. So they cost money. What you have are like access to the free. I just want you to explore it and see what's out there. And then, yeah, what's due next week? So you should do your best to come to class ready to talk about all of at least the first 5 of chapter 1, and the first half of chapter 2 practices. So if you think about it that way, and there's not a clear rhyme or reason, if you get bogged down in the chapter practices, keep in mind that you have that one writing project. That is important. That one writing project is like the most important thing because the practices lead up to that. So again, you don't have to go through the practices as they appear. One way you might consider, I need everyone to mute themselves. One thing you might consider is to look at the writing projects and see which writing project piques your interest, and then go through the chapter that way based on like, I like that writing project, so I'm going to start there. And then, so there are a whole bunch of different ways. Remember, I just need to see that you've completed the work. Someone got kicked out. I need to see the numbers and clearly label the writing project and the number of the writing project that you selected. We will talk about the writing projects too. It will likely not be every week that particular chapter, but we will come back to them. And so that's my verbal sort of recap for today. I do have office hours starting after class. So if you stay on and you have a question, I'll answer it right away. But I'm going to transition to just phone. So unfortunately today, most of my office hours are going to be phone. And I will, so I'm going to have to log off and then switch to Zoom on my phone, because I just got to do a bunch of moving around in my office. So I'm going to stop the, oh, I know. Nope, I had 3 minutes. One other thing, someone asked me about attendance or no. Oh, why I record these things. So a couple things I just wanted to show you here is that the Zoom, I have to log off anyway, because the Zoom for my office hours is different. So you have the office hours Zoom link that is I'll be there doing Tuesday and Thursday office hours time. And we have our class Zoom session. The reason we have 2 different ones is because I teach different courses. So each course has its own Zoom link, but all the courses share the same office hours link. So office hours will be anybody who feels like popping in. If you don't want to be in the waiting room, or if you're in the waiting room too long, you can always make appointments, but I don't have a bunch of people coming to see me. I don't know, I might get popular. But that's why you have 2 different links here. And then the last thing I want to show you is in the, I think the discussion forums area. So this is where I'm going to post the class session videos. So there's a form for that. And then this is the virtual office. This is where you can go and ask questions offline. So I try to answer these. I try to get to them Monday through Friday, like within 24 hours. So don't send me emails. So I usually have links for every different things that we're doing in class. So use that virtual office that way. But to see the videos, they'll be listed where it says class video. And here I have the video from Tuesday. And I'm also going to post, you'll also see the chat highlights posted with the video once I get that all set. And you can read through the alternative attendance options. Sometimes people need it. And you just, if you have questions, I'll address them next week, or you can post questions. It's 2:29, so I'm gonna stop this video.